This episode of the ZuLoo Poodcast is sponsored by ZuLoo Inc., a benefit corporation dedicated to the goal of universal access to toilets, hygiene, clean water and sanitation through the power of social enterprise. Learn more at ZuLoo.com.
And then there was a line of women waiting along the wall, and they were all Chinese, and they all looked at me, and I can't imagine they see many foreigners in that place because it was really quite remote. And they all gestured to me to go. And I was horrified because those behind the little walls, they were partitioned and no doors. And there was just a trough running through the whole thing. And you just had to sit there and do your business.
Welcome to the ZuLoo Poodcast, where we talk all things poop, toilets and sanitation. Through insightful news, impact stories and quirky humour, we aim to discuss and highlight the critical role toilets play in whisking poop out of our lives, the impact toilets have, or lack thereof, in the health and wellness of humanity, and what ZuLoo is doing to help solve the current global sanitation crisis.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the ZuLoo Poodcast. We're excited to have you listening in. Today we've got Jocelyn back. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be back,
Yay.
as always.
I know, it's so fun to have you sitting across from me. I love when you're here. It's a great
Thanks,
time.
guys.
It's like a breath of fresh air
Truly.
How did that feel?
blowing down from midway.
Canyon breeze headed
That's
your
right.
way.
Well, and in addition to Jocelyn, we have a very exciting special guest today that Darren
Super
and I
special.
got to.
We're glad
Super
Jocelyn's
special.
here to share this with us because, as you know, we've been praying to, the poo gods and whoever else would listen for Rose George to join us on the Poodcast. And
Rose George joined us on the Poodcast.
that's right. We're going to we interviewed her and we'll be circling back to that later in the show.
Yeah, it was great. Can't wait to talk more about it. But before we hop into Rose's interview, Darren, what's in the poo news? What's been happening?
It's kind of a little snap poll here.
I love these.
Love the snap polls.
You can go into more detail if you want, but have you ever brushed your teeth in an airplane bathroom?
Yes.
Yes.
Not that I can recall.
Now I'm
Nothing
scared
you
about
can
what you're going to
call.
say next.
Now the other question is, should you brush your teeth in an airplane bathroom?
Oh, no. Don't tell me it's like...
But it's okay because you're alive and you're still here.
Well, yeah, you obviously didn't die from it. Maybe.
Not yet.
Maybe yes, no.
Well, I think we're both guessing the answer is no, you
Yeah.
should not.
Okay, so this is an article, DeMarge magazine. I've never heard of it. But anyway, they interviewed some flight attendants, and the flight attendants were kind of unanimous. And Trevor, your Sadie probably would agree. The flight attendant says never brush your teeth. I mean, you could brush your teeth on a plane, but don't do it in the bathroom because they said the water on the plane comes from the same water tank that they use for everything else, and it's not filtered water.
Well, why isn't there a warning sign?
And they also said, in general, because of a plane bathroom, there's no windows or the ventilation is not the best. They recommended that it's not a good idea because of the germs and that sort of float around in there, right? Even though, planes make a big deal, like, oh, we sanitize every square inch, and they mainly focus on COVID, right? But who's thinking about the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
I'm just always curious how many people actually try to wash their hands in an airplane bathroom after they leave.
Well, they don't make it easy.
They don't make it easy. And so it's very tempting to not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no.
But you do it anyway,
Of
good
course.
people.
Absolutely.
They also said these are from flight attendants. They said you should never use the first sections of toilet paper on the roll.
Oh, yeah. I never do that.
Why?
Because that it says turbulence frequently cause men who's usually standing up
Oh my gosh.
to miss the bowl while peeing. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh,
and so maybe,
man.
they may, whoa.
Well, that
and
doesn't
they may hit
only
some
apply
things.
to men. If you're hovering, that is a balancing act for
that-
sure.
I mean, to
Totally
hover
is.
during turbulence, that's a trick too, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So anyway, that's they recommended to just take some bottled water with you. Probably a better idea, and not to use the water out of the sink.
No.
And sometimes I've seen
Yes.
signs. Usually they're like on foreign flights where they say, "Don't drink the water."
Yeah.
So I think it's probably a good idea. Anyway.
Interesting.
That's
something I never thought about.
Something to
but
think about.
A significant bummer.
Now I'm going to think about it more.
Yeah. So also,
I just don't know who would take the first couple of squares if the toilet. I'm just always kind of grossed out by that in public restrooms.
If they look like they've been splattered on, like,
Well, yeah, but even if they don't, maybe that's just one of my weird bathroom things. Is I always rip the first couple of sheets off and discard them because I don't know where somebody else's hands have been.
Right.
And they're probably pulling and then ripping,
gosh. That's what
I'm
I already have
imagining.
such a long list of weird bathroom things, and now I have to add this to it.
Well, I could just imagine Jocelyn trying to make her nest while the plane is in turbulence and the seatbelt light is on. She's making her nest.
Well, here's the one good thing about an airplane bathroom: it's so small
that
even my 2-foot long legs, my knees hit the door if I squat low enough. So it helps me brace.
Oh my gosh.
The one good thing about using
You're
an
not
airplane
bracing
bathroom.
like this?
I'm not
Okay.
because I'm wall sitting basically,
Okay.
but I can't touch the toilet because that's disgusting. So my knees have to hit the door. These are things I just never thought I'd be sharing in public.
Are you saying you're hovering in flight?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Even the nest is not,
Enough.
The nest
it's
is
not enough. There is just that. It's just not enough.
Even 3 layers is not enough. Okay.
Because you would have to wipe up who knows how many other people's stuff before sitting down. It's just not even worth it.
Yeah.
It's too gross.
Yeah. And you're a hoverer too,
I'm
right?
just a hoverer, yeah.
Yeah.
Even an airplane bathroom.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is
and every single public restroom.
Amen.
I've never touched a seat. Never sat
I love
sat
it.
on a seat.
I found a kindred spirit.
See, I'm kind of the opposite. I'll go in there and just take a break, because you're sitting on a long flight. I mean, hey, if I'm in a toilet, I'm in the most relaxed position possible. You don't have other people, flight attendants bothering. It's your own little, private space for 10 minutes until somebody starts knocking on the door. Hey,
I don't know how anyone over 5'4" could even sit on it because it's so
compact.
Yeah, it's so tight.
Yeah. Well,
glad you enjoy it.
Yeah. So anyway,
what else is happening?
But I'm rethinking my because I'll often brush my teeth too. I'm I'm going in there, brush my teeth, and read a book, and
never again.
Maybe I should rethink that. Also in the news, we've got we had am I pronouncing it right? Lappy. Right. Well, they've got some competition in the UK.
It's good to have healthy competitors.
Because all things toilet related come from UK. This is this is a woman's urinal, and I wish I could maybe show you what this. Well, yeah, I can show you what this looks like. This is a. So this is
urinal.
This is what it looks like. Remember, Lappy had 3.
There's 3. Yeah,
it was in a circular pattern, and it had three systems. This looks like 1, 2, 3. This has 6.
That's incredible.
And
it almost looks like a carnival ride.
Yeah, it totally does.
Yeah, you think it would spin?
Yeah.
While you're in there.
What's it called? Pediquil? Pequel. Pequel.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So Pequel, they say the UK's first women's urinal. So the other guys were in Denmark, right?
Yep.
So you just get to stand?
So yeah, you kind of stand squat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we know how that goes.
We know how that goes. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they'd be that difficult to use if you're a squatter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And these are guys, we should have them on the show and
yeah, we ought to invite them.
Talk about it, you know?
Here's my question. If you are trying to attempt something similar in the woods, your number one concern is splashback.
Yeah.
So how do you avoid splashback?
Well,
is it just like a really deep hole?
Yeah, it's similar to like a porta potty or a urinal. Yeah, but just for women, so there's no. I love it.
Well, and it's just a urinal.
Yep, it's just a urinal.
It's not
a toilet.
Not a place for number 2 to go.
Yeah.
But the problem, and this is another article that references Pequel, that some users were complaining on TikTok that. And again, I'm not a woman. I don't. But I think sometimes, women maybe while you're doing a number 1, maybe a number 2 might manifest. That may happen sometimes with some people. I would
say it's more the opposite.
Yeah,
not.
But if you're going into like a man going into a urinal, you're standing the whole time, and there's not a likely chance that a number 2 is going to like.
Well, true.
Slip out, right? But anyways, it's there was a bunch of people on TikTok, and actually, Pequel had good humor about it because it was their units, and they were showing it on their TikTok channel about people complaining when they would go in to use the urinal, and lo and behold, find one of these guys, a number 2 in there. Which is not what it's designed to do. It's not. There's no flush. There's no. Because when it's in there,
it's basically just a drain compartment too. So like you really have to.
It can't really handle a solid piece of matter.
Yeah.
It's just your liquid, right? So, snap pole. I'm wondering if you guys ever. Well.
Yeah.
Is that a common thing for women? Like
how are you going to land this plane?
Sometimes maybe a number 1 becomes a number 2 situation because you are in a squatting position, right? And that's a natural.
Never happened. It's usually the reverse.
Yeah,
maybe when you're pregnant, maybe that happened.
Yeah, pregnant. That's a whole different story.
I would just say that it's just different sensations, right? It's the same sensation that a male probably feels. That like the sensation to go number 1 is different than the sensation to go number 2. So unless you're like. Already feeling the sensation for number 2 and you're like, I don't have time, I just have to do number 1. But then your body says, we got different plans.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, it seems like it, especially if there's gas involved, right? Because gas is a little bit of sometimes it plays tricks on you, right? Maybe you're thinking that, I'm just going to let out some gas here. And, maybe, I know this is happening to Trevor. He's like busting up over here. In fact, I think I was on a trip with him somewhere and it happened to him. But if you want to share, Trevor, no. Anyway,
poor Trevor,
he's dying.
There's always a risk of sharding when you're doing a 1 and it becomes a number 2. I'm thinking it could be a thing with these women urinals. I don't know. I mean, I was just throwing it out there.
Well, so here's the other thing. I think that the squat to go number 1 is a different position than the squat to go number 2.
Oh, is it?
Agreed.
Yeah, because it's a number 2 squat. Your knees are like higher than your pelvis, like on a squatty potty, right? You're sitting down, your feet are raised.
If you have a squatty potty.
If you have a squatty potty or a poopy stool or whatever brand you use.
But it's not, usually you don't encounter a squatty potty in most places, I don't think.
Right.
No.
But if you're going number 1, that just doesn't make sense to use a squatty potty because it's you're like, you're more just like leaning back.
I think this is something women can train themselves to handle. I think this seems like a genius solution, especially when you're like in a hurry.
Yeah.
I'm still concerned about splashback though, because if I were walking in and there were pee everywhere, I wouldn't want to step on it. And then I would like freak out. But
these are most common in like public events, like festivals and
marathons.
If they make that thing spin and it becomes a carnival ride experience, I think this is an amazing
It looks like
invention.
It might do that.
I would love that.
We need to have them on the show to maybe show us how it works. But
it's like a revolving door.
I like this one too because it seems like the partitions go higher than lapis.
Lapis, you're sort of where you were sort of from here
just
up.
Like cuts your chest so you can see out.
No.
But this is a little more private, it seems. Yeah.
Cool. Well, good to know that they're around.
Yeah. So Still haven't seen it in the U.S. I mean, Europe is just way ahead of us.
Always ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
They got the bidets. They got these women urinals. So
trying to convince him to come over. And with the help of Rose George,
yes,
perhaps we're one step closer here in the U.S.
Speaking of Europe, London calling. Yeah, we are. We, I don't know if you saw the UK here flag here in honor of Rose George. And we talked about her books. I don't know was she impressed when I showed her my, this is my original copy of her book, Big Necessity, that I got in Turkey.
She seemed impressed.
And she was like, I didn't know my book was on sale in Turkey. I'm like, well, I don't know. That's where I got it. But, and she also came out, we're going to talk about, we talked about a little bit in the interview about her book, 9 Pints, which, I
don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We don't want to spoil
let's talk about it. Let's talk about it after our chat with Miss Rose George. So enjoy, and we'll see you after. Rose George, welcome to the ZuLoo Poodcast. We are just so delighted, so excited, maybe more excited than we've ever been to have anybody on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much. That's quite an introduction.
Well, we've had some cool people on the show, but none of them quite compare to the person for whom we really founded ZuLoo for.
Wow.
Well, I say we, but really it's Darren.
Wow. Again, that's quite an accolade.
We have you on a high pedestal because I was in an airport in Turkey of all places, and I bought your book. This is my original copy of your. I think it was in 2010. I think this is the 2008 version, and I read it while I was traveling through Turkey, and I came back and I thought, wow, this is it really kind of sparked the whole. It just opened my eyes to the necessity. The big necessity, right? That's the title of the book. And you did such a great job in illustrating the issue, not only in all the statistics, but in a personal way, right? Because you've had those same thoughts and those same questions in your mind, and you went on this sabbatical and wrote this book. And so wanted to find out what was and I know you've written books on a lot of different topics, shipping and different aspects. But what was maybe you could give us the backstory on how the book came about.
Yeah, of course. And first of all, I had no idea my books were on sale in airports in Turkey. Well, that's amazing. Excuse me. I have done books on a few topics, but I would say The Big Necessity is probably the one I am most fond of and in a way most proud of. Not because it was difficult to write, because it actually wasn't. Because the funny thing about the world of sanitation, and remember we're going back to 2006, 2008, was that it had hardly any attention at that point. And so people who worked in it were just absolutely delighted that anyone was paying any attention to them. So they were just lovely and open and welcoming and chatty. But to answer your question, it actually goes back to my time working at Colors magazine, which is the Benetton publication. And while I was there, the editor-in-chief, who's the Benetton photographer, Oliviero Toscani, decided we were going to make a coffee table book called Cacas. And this would be a book about poop, illustrated by very beautifully shot studio shots of crap, mostly animal, one human. But alongside it, we had these little stories, like 200 words long, of things from the world of toilets and poop. Most of it was an absolute revelation to me. And fast forward a couple of years, and I was in the office of Philip Gwyn-Jones, who was the director of Portobello Books in London. And I'd pitched a book to him that he hadn't wanted. And he had said, okay, I don't want that book, but I do want you. So what else have you got? And toilets was actually, I think, number 3. But once I started talking about it, I knew that I could be fascinated by it enough to write a book about it. And by the end of me going on what I knew, which was 2.6 billion at that point, people without a toilet, which is a fact that blew my mind and still blows my mind, really. Philip was on his feet and walking around the room in absolute excitement and just saying, yes, 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 we're going to publish this book. And was the most fantastic backer and supporter, because, I mean, it was a tall order. I mean, a youngish woman at that point wanting to write a book about poop, it might not have sold at all because people might have been too disgusted to pick it up, or we really didn't know. And so I said it wasn't a difficult book to write, but actually in a way it was, because I had to tread a very fine line. And you mentioned that it was personal, and it had to be personal because partly that's how I write, and also I like to go places to make them vivid for the reader. So I had to go down the sewers, and I had to go to horrible Chinese toilets in the middle of nowhere. And but it also had to be, I didn't want it to be a comedy book. I didn't want it to be, a toilet humor book. And I didn't want it to be a didactic kind of academic, isn't this terrible, you should do this kind of book. So I had to tread a line between those two things. What I wanted most of all was for it to be readable. I wanted people to pick it up, put it down, and then want to pick it up again. And they would only do that if, A, there was a personality in it they could perhaps identify with or be a companion to throughout my travels in the book. And secondly, if they cared about what I was writing about.
Well, I definitely think you struck that chord, because I was able to just read right through it. And a lot of books I pick up and I start them, and you sort of lose interest, or the statistics kind of overwhelm you. But you really did a great job in sharing those personal stories, but then of your travels and different cultures, and then highlighting why it is a big necessity. And it really was the spark behind creating ZuLoo as an enterprise to help promote clean water, clean sanitation. And we're of course active now in India and Peru, and we're going to Nigeria. The World Toilet Summit, we're a sponsor of that, and we've had Jack Sim on the show, and we always talk about. We've had Jack Sim on twice. Wouldn't it be we'd be tickled pink if we had Rose George on the show? And so we're so again excited that we're glad that you're feeling better, and certainly excited to have you on. So you certainly had it's been, I know it's been a bestseller for a while, and then you recently you did an update to the book in 2014, and then of course you've got your TED Talk that I think has gone viral. I think I've shared it hundreds of times. But what keeps you coming back to the topic? I mean, you recently wrote in The Guardian an article about Tokyo toilets, and so you seem to be, you can't really let it go, can you?
I can't, and I don't want to, and people won't let me. So I think once you become identified, and if you manage to be able to communicate something accessibly, then I think, for example, newspaper editors, magazine editors, they will keep coming back to you because you can give them a decent story. I'm certainly not the only person who can do that. I mean, Jack is an amazing communicator and a lot funnier than I am. And he's been the most amazing ambassador for sanitation and toilets. But I keep coming back to it because even though my book came out in 2008, and even though I updated it in 2014, and even though that TED Talk which was from 2013, in fact, it's still being watched. Unfortunately, so many things I say in the book and in the update and in the TED Talk are not out of date. And that's a problem. Actually, that's sad that some, that people are still lacking toilets and kids are still dying from diarrhea, and much fewer children are dying from diarrhea, which is great. We've made a lot of progress. But the fact that anyone is dying from diarrhea which is so preventable and easily remedied by good sanitation and clean water. The fact that the connection between dirty water and lack of toilets is still routinely not made, and that so many nonprofits and UN organizations still only want to talk about clean water because they still think toilets are not what donors want to give money to. I think that has changed a lot as well, but I still think it's a problem, and I still think there is this unwillingness to be frank about this stuff and to be frank about shit. I don't know if I can say shit on your podcast, but I just have. Maybe you're going to bleep me out. But yeah, to be frank about this thing that we all do, all of us, all the time, and which is an amazing and valuable underused resource as well. And I think a lot of the book, what I talk about is still the same, and that's a shame. It shouldn't be in 2022, although a lot has changed, and there are new actors now, and ZuLoo was created, so all these things are good, and all these things are progress. But look at the state of the UK at the moment, and how much sewage is going into our rivers, and people are absolutely up in arms about it. But it's been happening for forever. And nobody was up in arms about it before. And I'm glad they are now. And I'm glad there are celebrity campaigners, because that does sometimes help. But the state of our infrastructure is getting worse. Certainly in the UK, we have these aging sewer systems. In the US, I know that, I think the American, I forget what it was called, it's the Society of Civil Engineers. I think it grades US infrastructure. And I think it did increase from a D to maybe a C- or something. But sewage infrastructure is still not glamorous or sexy. It doesn't get attention, and it's only when it breaks that voters pay attention to it. So, which is kind of good in a way, because now it's all breaking. So we are facing still a massive health and engineering disaster, really. There's still so much work to do.
Yeah, I'm glad that you bring that up, because you could so easily say, like, yeah, my book is outdated, we've made so much progress, and that just wouldn't be the truth. I mean, we're grateful to have been happy consumers of your book, because, and I can speak to, personal experience. I've only been with ZuLoo for about a year. And I just really didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about the world of sanitation. I think I'm probably like 90% of the population. I just never paid any attention to it. And now anywhere I go, whether it's the park with my daughter or my own bathroom, which is, literally the other door, I'm just thinking how grateful I am for sanitation workers, how grateful I am for my toilet, how many improvements could be made to my toilet. I live in a house that was made in like 1910. So yeah, I don't know what the infrastructure of the house is, and the plumbing, I'm sure, is not up to date in a way that, contributes to conservation of water or is helpful with my toilets. Like, big bowl takes 10 gallons to flush type toilet.
Oh my goodness.
I know it's old. It needs an update for sure. But there are little details like that, and there's something to bring awareness to for everybody in every area of the world, whether you've got Western plumbed and flushed toilet systems or you're using a split pit latrine. Like there's a way to find an improvement in each of those areas. And it really is just a matter of what you're saying, bringing attention to the issue and bringing it to people in a palatable way, right? A way that they want to talk about, because I think in a sense, and maybe you'll tell me if you agree with this or not, I think we're all kind of curious to talk about the world of sanitation, to talk about poo. It's like, I have a 2-year-old and she's like, what is this? She's
they're the best people. Yeah, the children. Before we socialize them into thinking it's impolite, they're the best people to talk about sanitation, because they're just they accept it. It's just, it's a fact of life, and they talk about it like they talk about what they're having for tea or what they, what they're going to play with. But yeah, you're so right, because I think in the Big Necessity, I talked about the sanitation ladder, which was a big concept at the time. And I'm pretty sure it's not used anymore, and I hope not. And that was exactly what you were saying, that, well, there was this, you started with the hole in the ground, and then you went up the ladder and you ended up with the flushed and plumbed toilet. But that was it. There was no sense that you ended up with a flushed and plumbed toilet that led to a very efficient wastewater treatment plant that dealt with the waste effectively and did not discharge it into the nearest river. So it was nonsensical in a way. I mean, it was fine in that there was a sense of, you could always, like you say, you can always improve what you've got. But there was this assumption that the flush toilet was the absolute pinnacle of development. And I think now we know it is not. You have to be flexible according to context and situation. And in most of Norway and Sweden, people go to their lakeside cabins and their forest cabins, and they've all got dry toilets and see nothing wrong with them. And children grow up having dry toilets and think flush toilets are just really weird and freaky. Why on earth do you poop into drinking water, and why does it float, and where does it go? And I think that's great. I just think that's great that kids in Sweden and other parts of the world that have these dry toilets just think it just jolts people into thinking, oh, well, maybe the flush toilet is not the only way to do things, and maybe there are ways of improving it. Maybe you don't need to flush 10 gallons of drinking water down your toilet. Maybe you can divert some grey water to drinking to flush your toilet, or I don't know where you live, Kelsey, but put in a composting toilet or something. But it's very difficult if you live in an urban environment. If you live in a city like I do, how do you put in a composting toilet? It's only really appropriate for people who have land and somewhere to put the compost. I mean, I do have an allotment. What do you call an allotment? I can't remember. Anyway, like a kitchen garden. But I'm not sure I'm allowed, even according to regulations, to put in a composting toilet. And I would have to really research it. And I imagine it would be very difficult. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point just with, legislation and politics. We had the phenomenal opportunity yesterday to speak with Satali from Sanitation and Water for All, who their organization does a lot of connecting the dots between private sector and government employees, and just, educating politicians really on the issue of sanitation, and working with them in really detailed ways to change local laws so that their communities can receive access to improved sanitation, if just sanitation at all. They work a lot in communities in Africa. So yeah, it's interesting to think about, right? Like how could we make those changes? The future, I think, certainly for bringing in a collaboration between climate change and sustainable agriculture and things like that is reuse of human material waste. But how do you do that at an urban area? And I'll be curious to know at the World Toilet Summit this year, because the theme is innovation for economic development, if and who comes to the table with a solution that could use those. Sorry, that was a really belated thought. And Darren, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, I think, Senate, the technology aspect, and we talked about the flush toilet, having been, innovated, created and implemented primarily in Victoria and London, and has been, obviously adopted worldwide, but it's not the only system, right? So, but yeah, Rose, I was curious to know, I know you've shared a lot in your book and and some of your articles, personal stories. What would you say would be the most, the situation that you found yourself in, or as you've traveled the world, that you found that stands out most to you as the most interesting or precarious bathroom situation, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us?
Well, I think when people ask me that, I think they expect me to talk about the worst toilet I've encountered, and there have been many, many of those. I mean, I remember I opened the book with an account of a restaurant in the Ivory Coast where the young waiter just showed me into a tiled room. That was it. There was nothing. I mean, there was no hole. There was nothing. I mean, that was pretty shocking. But actually, I think the most unsettling toilet experience I had while writing the book was in China, somewhere in the center of China. I think we were in Shaanxi province. And I was on a road trip with a friend. We were driving through most of China, actually. I mean, it was an astonishing trip. But we stopped at a service station to get gas and to have some food. And I needed the toilet. And we were with this Hong Kong British woman called Red, who also needed the toilet. And she would not go. And I said, well, I thought you were desperate. She said, yes, I am, but I'm not going. So I went, and I went into this, what do I call it? I suppose a room. I'm not sure. It wasn't really what you would think of as a public bathroom. Like there were no stalls or anything. And there was just a low wall with kind of partitions. It looked like an animal stall, like it's some kind of animal. I don't know. You'd expect like sheep or cows to be behind. I don't know. It was very strange. And then there was a line of women waiting along the wall, and they were all Chinese, and they all looked at me, and I can't imagine they see many foreigners in that place because it was really quite remote. And they all gestured to me to go, and I was horrified because those behind the little walls there were partitions and no doors, and there was just a trough running through the whole thing, and you just had to sit there and do your business. With no doors, nothing. And of course, they partly were doing it to be polite, but not really. They just wanted to see, the white woman do it and the foreigner do it. And I did. And luckily, I just had to pee because I'm not sure if poop was involved, whether I would have had the nerve to do it. But it was really instructive and really unsettling because I realized how unquestioning my assumption that there would be a door would be. And from then on, when we had about 1,000 miles to drive to Beijing, and I asked everyone we encountered pretty much, particularly in like interview situations, I said, why are the Chinese happy to have no doors? And it wasn't the case. Increasingly, as we got towards cities, you would start to see doors in public toilets. But what was really fascinating was that people thought it was a really odd question and they could not answer it. Some of them said, oh, it's because they're peasants, these people, but that wasn't true. And some of them said, we just don't see the need for it. We've grown up with no doors and no privacy, and we just don't see the need for it. So that was really, that was probably my most complex, peculiar toilet situation during the writing of the book. And I think I learned quite a lot from it. Because if you think about it, the other thing about American toilets, I also write this in the book, they are astonishingly unprivate. But if I ever say to an American, why are your public bathrooms so public? Like you have stalls that never reach the ceiling or the floor. You have massive gaps down the hinges that you can see into easily. There is zero aural privacy, so you can hear everything. I mean, that's the problem in every public bathroom, which is why women flush the toilet a lot to hide the sound. But American toilet stalls are just astonishingly friendly and open. And yet most Americans are like, oh, well, I've never thought about it. Oh, yeah, well, it's just what we're used to. So it's amazing what you can get used to. It's like going back to those Norwegian kids in there with their dry toilets. If they'd grown up with flush toilets and been asked to use a dry toilet, they would have been equally freaked out by that. But the fact that their norm was something different means that they had never questioned it. And I think it's the same in public bathrooms. It's always when I go if I fly to the US, I'll use the public bathroom in the airport, and routine, I'll just be like, oh yeah, the least private public bathrooms in the world are in America. The most privileged country I know.
It is a kind of a dichotomy because, I think normally Americans would say, yeah, we definitely want to be private. But yet I think that's one of the dreads that a lot of people have when they go to a public restroom, because it's not that way. And I always think to myself, there must have been some, because it's become such those partitions that you're talking about, they're everywhere. And I just can't help but think there must have been a great partition salesman at some point that just did an awesome job selling these very cheap, quick, easy partitions. And then it became sort of like, oh, all of these bathrooms are that way. I thought all public bathrooms was that way until I went to Europe. And I go to Europe. We go to Europe quite a bit. And I love it. It's just like, full on door, solid door. You can lock it. It's not, you can't, hand, people ask you for toilet paper no, it's just your own stall. In fact, many times, as they'll have, the idea of having too many women restaurant or too many, women standing in line for a restroom is sort of a non-issue, because it's, everybody's got their own stall, and the washroom actually is unisex. There's no, but it's okay because everybody's got their own full-on door, floor to ceiling that locks and everything. So it doesn't matter who you're washing hands with, whether they're men or women or whoever, right? So
I don't think that's the norm. That does happen. And the French are very fond of that, particularly in service stations. But women don't like it. Women don't like unisex bathrooms, and they don't feel safe in them. So I think in the UK we still have, there are people who are putting in unisex bathrooms, but what tends to happen is that they remove the women's bathroom, put in the unisex bathroom, and so they actually remove capacity for women. So you still get queues of women. Right. So we haven't figured that out yet. And I don't think from a woman's perspective, a unisex restroom entirely is necessary. It's not always appropriate, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the Atlanta airport, I was there recently, and they actually took out because they ran into issues of long lines and all of that. So they actually converted, I think, half of the men's restrooms to 100% women, and they wound up cutting out all the waits and lines, and it's like 2-1 now in Atlanta. So kudos to Atlanta for
fantastic.
Making that happen.
Hope they got a big prize.
Yeah. We'll send them an award, but you bring up some interesting points. I was going to ask you about you mentioned your photo on, is it the photo, I think, on Amazon, your profile photo on Amazon, it has you sitting with all these packages. What is that? What is that exactly? Is that?
So that is the apartment of Menstrual Man, who's a South Indian guy. I wrote about him in my book, 9 Pints, which actually arose out of The Big Necessity, because after The Big Necessity, I started to get asked to write more about menstrual health and menstrual taboos and menstruation in general, which obviously is a huge unaddressed issue. And so I'd heard about this guy, Menstrual Man, and I was in India working for UNICEF. So I flew down to South India and I met him. His full name is Arunchala Muruganantham, but he's known as Muruga, and he's a really amazing figure. I won't go into his story because it's really, really long, but it is fascinating. And he was a self-taught engineer who realized that his wife could not afford commercial sanitary pads. And so he single-handedly, over about 10 years, devised a machine that would produce cheap sanitary pads using cheaper materials that women could operate. It was largely mechanical, didn't really need a lot of electricity, didn't need a lot of skill. And so he's now sold 4,000, I can't remember the exact figure, but he sold thousands of these machines. And those pads that I am sitting amongst are all different brands, from community organizations where women have made these menstrual pads and they sell them. And so they have some lovely names like Freedom and I don't know, Fly, and I can't remember, but he got them all out and he laid them out. And I just said, okay, I'll sit in the middle of them. Thank you. It was quite comfortable. But it was wonderful. I went to one small business which was linked to an organization for vulnerable adults. And I made a menstrual pad, sanitary pad, and I was absolutely delighted. And the other thing is that Maruga does is that he unlike commercial companies, he knows that women do not always have the same flow throughout their period. So he sells packets which have different sizes of sanitary pads in them, which is, genius. But you'll never find that in commercial organizations. So he's a really, really interesting guy, and I recommend you look him up. And there's a documentary about him. There's a film about him, a Bollywood film called Pad Man, and there's a documentary about him. Can't remember. I think it might be called Menstrual Man. But he's really inspirational and a nice guy.
Well, it's cool that so there's I haven't read your 9 Pints book, but is that mainly the core topic? Is that what it's about?
Well, I did a bit of subterfuge. So I didn't want to write a book about periods because I didn't want half the world to refuse to pick it up. So I broadened it. And also because I started thinking about menstrual blood and why it was so taboo and so bad and why girls have to drop out of school when they're bleeding and things like that. And I started thinking more broadly about blood. So it ended up being a book about all sorts to do with blood, from me spending a week in a trauma department to there's a chapter on leeches, there's a chapter on plasma. And there are 2 chapters on periods, which I stuck in there. So I think they're chapter 7 and 8. So men who are reading it have to read it because they're halfway through the book by then. So they have to get their period education.
Right. Yeah.
There are men who are totally at ease with periods. I do know that. But the majority are a little bit bewildered by it.
Yeah, I think it depends on your upbringing. I mean, I grew up with all boys. And so, I found out, I think in high school, like girls were talking about it. I'm like, what are they talking about? And I went home to my mom and I'm like, well, what are these, what are they talking about? And she was like, oh, well, I have all boys. And so I never even brought it up. And so I was a little clueless, but it relates to, just anatomy in general. And it flows into a lot of things, a lot of misconceptions. I think that unless you're educated about it, you just don't know. Right. And,
I think a lot of benefits could come from educating boys about what happens to girls.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and Kelsey's been great as ever since she came on to ZuLoo, because, I always thought about toilets and poop, and I thought, okay, that's pretty simple and straightforward. But as it relates to, women's issues and sanitation and or menstruation issues, how a toilet impacts, like you're saying, girls in school and all of that. And we certainly see that in some of the recipients of the toilets that we build in India, and how they're, just one toilet just has a huge impact in, and keeping the girl going to school and keeping her safe. And it's just a whole aspect that I think, beside the whole, poop and privacy and all that we've been talking about, it's obviously a big topic. So,
yeah, and I think it's really important that you raise the issue of safety, because I think particularly for a woman and a girl, that a toilet can be a safe place, but can also be a very unsafe place. And I've seen over the years a lot of public toilets in particular designed in a way that do not take into account that, women might not want to go and use them at night because they're not well lit, or they can't see around corners. Or, I was reading this morning in the paper, there was a story about how at festivals, so many women who are at like music festivals are scared to go and use the toilet at night because they have to walk down dark passageways, and the rates of sexual assault at festivals are pretty high. And, and I think sometimes there's a theory that, we'll just install toilets and that'll be fine. But a toilet is not, in a way, it's a very simple thing, but it's not, because humans are not. And the way our attitude to our human waste is not simple. And there are all sorts of other issues, which I'm sure ZuLoo is entirely on top of. And, a toilet is a really complex place in so many ways. So it's good that it is got right so often, but sometimes it isn't got right.
I think one eye-opening thing for me was reading the WHO and UNICEF joint statistical report on the Sustainable Development Goals for this year. And they outline very clearly, if you read the fine print, that a safe toilet that they categorize is not a public toilet. So a lot of approaches are, well, let's just go in, we'll put in community toilets, and that will solve the sanitation issue for, the couple hundred people living in that small little community. But it's not. That's not the solution. And it's not the approach that ZuLoo takes, because it's not as nuanced as it needs. Well, sorry, I'm saying that in reverse. It needs to be more nuanced. And that's why we prefer to give individuals and families toilets and have a community buy-in from them. Yeah. There's accountability issues, right? There's, okay, how are you going to use this? And a community toilet just isn't safe in that way.
No.
We have to wrap up, unfortunately. I'm so sad about it, because we could chat with you forever, Rose, but we so appreciate you taking the time to come on the ZuLoo Poodcast to enlighten us even more. I know I'm going to run to the bookstore and buy 9 pints right now, and probably every copy of every one of your other books. We would love to have you on again in the future. Is there anything that you would like to tell our audience as it relates to wash and sanitation, as perhaps a final goodbye that you would like them to hear or know?
I would like them, the next time they need to use the bathroom, to go into their bathroom and to take a long, hard look at the toilet, and just to think about it, and think about whether it could work any better, and think about whether they could cut down on their water use by putting a brick in the cistern or whatever. Or think about maybe using the shower water to flush it or something. But just look at it, and don't just see it as a inanimate object, but just have a think about it.
Awesome. I know that they'll do that because you said it, and you are queen of wash and sanitation. Thank you, Rose. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening, a wonderful weekend, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both. Bye.
Thank you, Rose.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, Darren, 9 pints. We sort of ended on that note.
She did, she said she didn't want to write a book about menstruation, so she plugged it in the middle of the book. She wanted to appeal to not just 50% of the population, but, anybody that's interested in blood. She wanted to.
All the non-vampires.
Yeah.
This is about you.
Might make you a little too thirsty if you're a little nighttime bat.
That's right. So I have no idea. I mean, I think she said there's 2 chapters on menstruation, and the rest, I don't know.
Well, the rest is about other blood-related topics.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is super fascinating. And she's fascinating just to talk to. You see her mind's always going. And just an honor to have her on the show. I just still pinch myself. I'm like, what? She's actually there. And
I know.
Is that really her?
You want to reach
she was
through the screen, shake her hand?
I don't know. When I came on, she was a little bit like, oh, okay, you're kind of a little too eager to talk to me, I was a little geeking out a little too much. She's like, okay, calm down. Jeez. Anyway, she seemed more comfortable with you for some reason, but.
Oh, we love Rose. We're grateful to Rose. We're hoping you're listening, and thank you for being on the show again. We're excited to dive into 9 pints and learn a little bit more. And I just have to say, in digesting our conversation with Rose, I was really impressed with how just casually she came upon the topic of sanitation. It wasn't even her first choice for a book pitch, but after 3 or 4, her publisher was like, that's the one.
Yeah.
We need that one. And so then that just kickstarted this whole global journey that she had of meeting the most random people, using the like scariest toilets. I mean, Jocelyn, to fill you in, she talked about using basically like a trough toilet in the middle of some rural Chinese village. And I just can't imagine that. Like,
humans are innovative.
And it was like a public, she was like, it's basically just a trough that you go and use. And anyway.
Speaking of blood, we're super excited because finally your Pixie cups came.
Yes, we ordered some Pixie cups.
And we're getting so many emails from our listeners about especially because there's still a tampon shortage, as we talked about last time.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry about the fly in here. I think it's a little... Trevor, did you bring that fly in here?
Because we're talking about blood.
It's because there's toilets on the table.
Okay,
Come on,
it's
all on the table.
It's a little stinky in here right now. So maybe we can take a minute and we can talk.
Yeah. Let's
talk about these Pixie cups.
Open these up, everybody, and show you what they look like. First of all, how cute is Pixie cups?
I know. I love
packaging.
It looks like something you would see at like a high-end boutique.
Yeah,
I love that. Like there's going to be a really yummy candle in here.
Girls like pretty things.
True that.
Okay, so here's the little bag.
Yeah, you mentioned a bag.
This is the little carrier bag that you keep it in.
So you put that in your purse and carry it.
This keeps it sanitary, right?
In your pocket, I guess.
Girls have tiny pockets. Our pockets can't fit something this big.
Our pockets aren't meant to be utilitarian.
Utilitarian,
They are for show.
I didn't want to presume everybody's got a toilet or a purse.
Oh, this is nice.
Green.
They've sent us some cleaner with it too.
Okay.
Oh no, this is.
Yeah.
Is
that a hand sanitizer?
Nope, it's a cup wipe, so it's to clean it.
Okay, so
water-based lubricant for it. Wow, they really provided you with the works here.
So I'm looking at Jocelyn's thing here, and I'm just wondering.
Why do I want to do this?
It looks a little transparent.
A little eye patchy.
Okay,
so this is the disc.
Oh, so there's a disc and there's a cup. So maybe explain the difference.
Yeah. Hang on, this is gonna get a little noisy here. They're so small.
Did yours have plastic? No? Was it in a plastic thing or?
Is this?
It's a little paper thing. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, cup.
Here's the wipes.
Everybody, disc. They're really not that different. I mean, you can see that they probably collect about the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is just where it sits in your body. So this just sits sort of inside of you like that, whereas the cup sits in you like this. So
okay, you lost me. But
yeah, like.
It sits in you like this.
This sits on top of your cervix, right? So this is the vaginal canal coming out here, and this would be your uterus. So it just flows straight into it.
Okay.
But the disc doesn't come in all the way that way. So the disc comes in and sits just underneath the cervix.
Okay.
Inside the vaginal canal.
What's this string thing? Is that a string?
That's just to help you keep track of it. Yeah, you do not pull out your cups by this string.
Oh, that's what I assumed.
Yeah, you do not do that.
Okay.
That's just so that you're not, I mean, you can pull on it a little bit to help you get it out, but it's not meant to be a leash.
So does Pixie give any kind of is there like a diagram?
There are all kinds of little goodies in here.
Little QR code to give you.
And the neat thing about Pixie Cup and their business model is that they are a 1-for-1 business model, which means for every cup or disc that you purchase, they donate a cup or a disc, which is great. So yeah, it looks like we got a little infographic here. Shows different sizes.
Okay. So what size is this? Is this like a normal?
I think this is
size?
Just the normal. Yeah.
Okay.
Or the small, because it looks pretty tiny to me. Maybe it tells us here. Oh, it's like color coded, I remember. Yeah, the other neat thing about Pixie Cup is that they have like a sizing guide.
Okay.
For like your flow and just your body size. So yeah. Oh, classic small. Okay. Yes. So these are both smalls. I should have gotten two different sizes.
I'm trying to read Jocelyn here. I'm trying to read Jocelyn's face here because
what's going through your mind here?
I don't know.
You made it very clear that you were a tampon gal 100% all the way, but now are you? I mean, is this something you would?
I would definitely try this because
see if it worked.
it always feels super wasteful to go, like, depending on the day and where you are in your cycle, how many tampons you go through a day.
Yeah.
And, you don't want to put those in the toilet, but you really don't want to put them in the garbage.
Yeah.
So it would be really cool to have a more sustainable option. I'm looking at some of these diagrams and I'm like, I'm not totally convinced, but I need to.
Like, not convinced that it would work, or not convinced that you would know how to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A, B, and C.
Both. Okay.
But I love the innovation of it. I love that it's something different than a tampon. I think it's really cool that we're figuring out new ways to handle this situation of being a woman. And I'm actually pretty excited to try this out.
Sweet.
Well, I'm not going to try them out. So you're welcome to take those home with you. And then
I have a question. Why is there a little nail file?
Is a legit thing. It's not just part of packaging.
That feels like a nail file. I'm like, how does this come into play?
Very curious. I wonder if it's to remove staining, because they can stain.
Well, it seems like they come in different colors too, right? Like, I mean, do you get to
the colors coordinate with the sizes that they are.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So very cute.
Yeah, they're super cute.
And that's not something you can say about tampons.
It's true. So this is, I always think this is kind of funny. You can cut the stem, apparently, if it's too long for you. But pamphlet makes sure to tell you that you only cut the stem after you've removed the cut.
Well,
yes, you don't want to put some scissors in there to try to do it.
Just being helpful.
The argument for keeping it, and I don't know if this ever happens to you, but I mean, toxic shock syndrome is a real thing.
Yes.
You can forget that you have a tampon in there.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the same thing. I didn't see a warning for that on here.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had friends that have gone into toxic shock because they forgot.
Yeah. It's easy to forget.
It's really
and maybe the stem helps to remind you that there's something there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would hope so.
Well, there you have it, everybody.
I guess if your little carrier bag is empty, then you're like, well, it's
where's
somewhere.
My cup?
Maybe it's somewhere that it shouldn't be.
Maybe the dog has it. You never know. Yeah. I love that it's called Pixie Cup. We just got a puppy and named her Pixie.
Cute.
Oh, there you go. Cute.
Yeah.
That's very cute.
Nice. Well, we hope you maybe try it out, and Jocelyn, tell us next time.
I will return and report, guys.
Return and report.
Awesome.
Love it. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for that quick unboxing. That was fun. Maybe we'll have to do that with some more.
Can we get presents every time?
Yeah, I love it. Hope you enjoyed our chat with Rose George. We certainly did. Hope to have her
on
the show. Thank you, Rose.
We love you. We worship you. We want you to
come to Utah.
Come to Utah and hang out.
Yes.
We'll give you a Pixie Cup.
We'll give you a Pixie Cup if you haven't tried one.
Yeah.
Love it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the ZuLoo Poodcast. Follow us on social media at our links in the show notes below. To learn more, visit our website, ZuLoo.org. If you liked the podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. For even more ZuLoo fun, send us an email with your toilet stories to podcast@ZuLoo.com for a chance to be featured on the podcast. This episode of the ZuLoo Poodcast is sponsored by ZuLoo Inc., a benefit corporation dedicated to the goal of universal access to toilets, hygiene, clean water and sanitation through the power of social enterprise. Learn more at ZuLoo.com.